Hello folks, Killface of Balor here. I'm going to try to quickly do a video covering some of the common terms that you'll need to know as a mage in particular. I'm sure I'll miss a few, so feel free to fill me in the comments or to correct anything that I get wrong. Also, if there are things that you feel like I should have covered, do realize this is mage specific, and there are hopefully several more of these videos to follow. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump right into this. Okay, so one of the big things, which I will do hopefully its own video later, is DPS, or damage per second. Mages are traditionally a DPS class, and for those of you who are saying no they aren't, I will cover lure monkeys in a second. Anyway, DPS is damage per second. It is the damage you do. There you go. So in that case, 3,400-ish. Divided by how long does it take that skill to cool down, and you'll notice that skill cools down quickly. Whereas if I throw, say, this skill, it'll do higher damage, but it took longer to throw, and it takes far, far longer to cool down. You'll notice even though there was a significant head start for Ice Blast, Firebolt still gets to be cast again. So you take the damage of your skill divided by how long it takes to throw, and that gives you your DPS, or damage per second, which lets you know how much damage roughly that you're doing over the course of a given fight. If a boss fight takes 10 minutes, then you take your DPS times 600, the amount of seconds in that 10-minute boss fight, and that was how much that skill did. So even though Firebolt hits for less, it actually shows significantly more DPS than Ice Blast on a boss. Alright, so that's what DPS means. It's how much damage you do converted into a metric that can measure skills evenly. It's not just how much damage does your skill hit for, but how much total damage does it do over the course of a fight. The next one then will be AoE, because we talked about Ice Blast already, and I'll see if I can find a spot with enough opponents to show you how AoE works. Well, here's one way to do it. Okay. Now you'll notice that I'll hit both of these at the same time. AoE is area of effect. It's not normally taken into a DPS consideration because in a bossing situation, the vast majority of your hits will be on only the boss itself, with a couple notable exceptions. So AoE is area of effect. There is one ice AoE skill and one fire AoE skill as a mage. DPS is the damage measurement. Okay, so the next one we'll cover is CDR, or CD, or recast, or cooldown reduction, lots of other things. And that's this, right? It decreases the recast of Firebolt and decreases the recast of Ice Blast. And there's other ones I have as well. But all that means is that, so like right now, let's go back to where I was, assuming I can find my way back there. Let me map back. We're going to go here. All right. The recast time does not affect, it only affects your cooldown, which is the amount of time it takes while that skill is red, right? So with Firebolt, it casts instantly, there is no cooldown time. With Ice Shards, however, notice the blue circle that goes around? That circle, that is not decreased with the cast time reduction, CDR, or whatever. So let's take a look at Ice Shards, because right now I have no cooldown for it. And you'll notice that if I equip cooldown for it, see how it jumps? So that's actually using a glitch to show you more accurately how it works. But it doesn't decrease the time the blue thing goes around, just the time it takes for the red thing to go around. Okay. Instacast, or instant cast, is Firebolt. It's no blue thing, no cast time. During that cast time, you can't cast other skills. See, now my firebolt will wait until my blast is done. And it can't be reduced by the cooldown reduction. Okay, now let's take a look at something here. What would normally go in this slot where the paw print is a battle mount. A battle mount can be ridden in combat, but I don't have one because I am squishy, meaning I am very easy to kill, and when you die on a battle mount you need a whistle to revive it, or you have to go pay gold, and whistles are only available through the Platinum Shop directly, and so I am unlikely to have one because of the likelihood that I'll die. Instead, what I'm using is this glider. Aeon mount, weapon mounts, those are terms that will be used for them now. This actually was what was used before battle mounts were implemented, and if I die on this, I don't have any such penalty where I have to replace it for some reason. A resurrection idol will be enough. Idling, resurrection idols, things like that, that is under consumables, and we'll cover them in potions at the same time. Oh, I guess I need to be in consumables to see things that are under consumables. There you go. Ancient idols will actually resurrect you all the way. What those are, they were in the game before this new version came out. This new version came out with Android, and what it's there for is to stop you from using sheer numbers to use characters that don't have enough levels and gear and things to take down a boss. It used to be you could get hundreds of people, and just as soon as you die, you get up immediately, and the boss never gets a break, but you get regenerated to full health, and as long as your group was big enough that the boss couldn't kill you all at one time, you had a chance of killing it. That's called zerging, using pure numbers instead of skill and gear and levels to take down a boss. It's kind of frowned upon. And the other thing you're going to need to know from here is pots, potions, restoration potions, restos, things like that. They restore 1,000 health and 1,000 energy. They can only be used once every 10 seconds, and they cannot be used while you're at full health. It will click and make me so I can't use another one yet. I have to wait. The item timer there, it's 10 seconds, and it's always 10 seconds, but it didn't actually use one up, and it didn't heal me because there was no chance to heal me. Now, if there's any damage at all, it will use a restoration potion. So the other thing that can happen is this. Oh, sorry, I messed that up. Normally, because see how my energy went down? I can actually spend a restoration potion just by spending some energy, and then it actually used my potion to restore, I don't know, 2 or 3 energy. 1,000 health, 1,000 energy potion wasted. So you want to make sure you have 1,000 health or 1,000 energy missing, preferably both, before you start using potions. And that will work even in combat. Okay, now, skills. This is Lure of Ice, Lure of Fire, somewhere over here, I at least used to have, Lure of Assassins. Those reduce an opponent's resistances to that particular type of damage. So ice mages will end up using Lure of Ice, fire mages will end up using Lure of Fire. Lure of Assassins is a pierce lure. It reduces the opponent's resistance to pierce damage, which reduces the resistance to bows, daggers, and spears. Also, possibly no, I think knuckle blades are crushed, but no one uses knuckle blades. So, that's what that is. I don't have any points in it right now. And then we have soldiers, which is slash resistance, swords, and axes. This will become more and more common, I think, as more and more warriors end up with Gelebron axes. But never super common. This one, unlikely to be super common at any time. Lure of Giants, knuckle blades, which no one at all uses, and hammers, which almost no one at all uses. Okay. We have also Lure of Magic, which is magic damage. It's good for druids. I have it somewhere here, but I don't know where, obviously. Oh well. For those of you seeing it and yelling at me, or maybe I actually don't have it, it is what it is. Sorry. Okay. Now, attunement, ice attune, fire attune, whatever, adds damage to your ice shards and your ice blast, or to your firebolt and your firestorm. And you'll notice one is much higher than the other, mostly just because I don't have points in the one versus the other. Although fire attunement will raise your skills by less than ice attunement will, but the reason for that is, again, they're calculating DPS. Your ice skills cast at about half the speed of your fire skills. For those of you who can do the math and know that that's not actually accurate, sorry, I'm just giving an estimate, and it is estimated as if it's about half. But because the fire skills cast about twice as fast, fire attunement does about half as much. Okay. Now, and you can't use them together, right? This cannot be cast if you have fire attunement going, and this will cancel your ice attunement. So you can only use one or the other. However, if you are a DPS mage, you need to be using firebolt and ice shards. You will notice both of those have points in them. After my hot swaps, they come max or as close to max as I can get them. And I have cooldowns for both of those, CDR. Now, the reason you need that is because even without the attunement, firebolt and ice shards are far and away your hardest hitting skills, meaning that you need to be working hardest hitting skills from a DPS point of view. Your highest hitting skill overall for max hitting, which is just seeing how high you can get an attack, is Ice Blast. But Ice Shards and Firebolt are going to be your biggest hitters. Almost never. Read never. There are some situations, but we'll ignore those. And for those of you saying, no, there aren't, okay, that's fair. There are basically no situations in which you want Ice Blast and Firestorm, because what you end up doing is getting caught in the middle of trying to cast skills. You have too many skills to cast. And when you have too many skills to cast, you're actually losing DPS. If you try and cast Firestorm, but you don't have Fire Attunement going because you're an Ice Mage, and at the same time, your Ice Shards cools down, and you could have been casting Ice Shards. Any delay in casting Ice Shards in order to fit in Firestorm is a DPS loss. You do less damage total over the course of the boss. So you always want Firebolt and Ice Shards as a DPS mage. You never want Ice Blast and Firestorm together. You want one or the other. So now abbreviations for skills. Firebolt is Bolt or FB. Firestorm is Storm or FS. The things worth noting are Firestorm. FS is also the universal thing for sale. So be aware that the context is going to be big, and it's important to still keep context because Druid's Storm Touch is also called Storm quite often, and very seldom ST, or at least I've almost never seen it ST. Don't play Druid a lot, but still. Frostbite doesn't really get abbreviated. Also, hardly anyone uses it because it's not boosted by attunements. Even though I have points in it, I actually don't always cast it as seen in my Lixing videos, and I'll probably take those points out and move them eventually. I just kind of wanted to test it out. Again, you only want to use Frostbite if you're an Ice Mage and you have spare points, and you only want to use Incinerate if you're a Fire Mage and you have spare points, because they get overwritten by somebody else's skill, meaning that if I have this at level 43, I throw a level 43 Frostbite, its initial hit lands, but then the damage over time Here. There you go. The tick damage gets overwritten by somebody who has a level 44 or above, or even a level 43 or above frostbite. So it very seldom gets used. Incinerate, INC, is the same deal. You only want to use it as a fire mage, and even then only if you have spare points. And the reason that you care about using the ice one as an ice mage, fire one as a fire mage, is not just so your element can stack together, but because you are also using the lure of that element. So this is going to hit for somewhere around, 40% of the damage if I don't have a lure going, and somewhere around 80% of the damage if I do. These are all very rough numbers on purpose, so sorry if that's triggering anyone. All right, hot swapping. That's what I've been doing here, right? I press a ring for a skill, and then I press the skill, right? I press a skull and a ring and the skill, and then the ring and the skill. And you'll notice when I press the ice shard ring, the fire bolt ring comes back up. When I press the firebolt ring, the ice shard ring comes back up. That's hot swapping. I have a whole video on it. Feel free to go watch that. Okay. There are also weapons that you can hold that look like pets. They're not pets, right? Those are weapon birds, or there's a bunch of things that people come up with to say now because originally they were supposed to be pets. The original term from OTM was companions. So companions mean a bird you hold, or like a weapon animal. And pets go in the slot here. And the free slot that is not the claw print or the pet is a barding, which at this point is just a piece of mount fashion. It changes the color of your saddle. Okay, so sigils. You'll see sigils of energy, sigils of health on my page. SIGs, as they're called, they regenerate you out of combat only. However, it is a very efficient way to get that health and energy. If you have the gold for it, they're often quite expensive. They're still a good investment, in my opinion, as you can see from the fact that I have thousands of them. And what they do is, just go ahead and regenerate you out of combat, and I will try to run my energy down enough that you can see exactly how that works without it running back up. Well, that's odd. Somewhere along this video, I actually swapped out one of my hot swap rings, which is unfortunate. You'll notice that if I can keep myself in combat long enough, my energy starts to deplete, right? And there you can see it's depleted, and now it gets regenerated by any in-combat regen I have. And then when I pop out of combat, which will take a few seconds, I go back to full because it regenerated me for 4,359. Because of that, it can be efficient to, at a boss fight, use that instead of luxury items. LUX, Lux, is luxury items. Combat regen or in-combat regen will refer to basically the ability to regenerate in combat. It only comes from gear, and it maxes out somewhere around 200 or 300, with the exception of the mage skill, energy boost, which if you're really struggling for energy can actually help with that. At max, it does somewhere around 300. It is not enough to keep you going at a boss fight. So, that is an option. I'm not covering all the skills in detail. E-shield, E-boost, those are for energy boost, energy shield. A lot of the skills you don't see covered here are just not used that often. Freeze is not abbreviated. So there's that. Sorry, no, there isn't. Sorry, it's a different fist. You'll see. There's that. Freeze holds your opponent in place. The problem is if you throw damage at them, it breaks the freeze. It has its uses. I'm not going to go too much into that. I've already jabbered about that quite a bit. Okay, direct damage. This is a big one. You'll notice that these gloves while they have very little armor or resistances or whatever for my level 205, they offer 700 direct damage to ice shards. That is literally just a 700 damage increase to my base damage, and it will be affected by resists the same way anything else will. So if I don't throw my lure, I'm going to get, I don't know, 40% or so of that, which will be about 280 damage, roughly. Now, there's a damage fluctuation, so I'm kind of picking a number somewhere around the middle of the range. Okay, so anyway, here you have that same thing. Skill points, but also direct damage. It'll show up in the description of items, and it's totally worth it for mages. Anyway, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for everyone else, but more so for mages. Okay, or for casters in general. So we have focus and vitality. These are your primary stats, FOC and VIT. You don't need to ever invest stats in dexterity or strength, DEX or STR, although some gear that adds bonuses to dexterity is still useful. Just don't spend your points on it. Ice magic and fire magic are your two main abilities. For the most part, you'll be able to tell what goes in ice and what goes in fire. There are some notable exceptions. For instance, Lure of Assassins, which is a popular skill, only does one of those, right? It can't be dependent on both, and so it's fire magic. However, they're supposed to be split in half. So ice magic gets Lure of Giants, right? And then Lure of Magic and Lure of Soldiers part ways as well. So Lure of Soldiers is fire magic, and Lure of Magic is ice magic, which means that overall, as a lure monkey, you would want to boost probably fire more than ice, because Assassin's Lure and Soldier's Lure tend to be more important than Magic Lure and Lure of Giants, which is barely ever important at all, because there's going to be more DPS warriors, rogues, and rangers than DPS druids, although DPS druids are helped by magic, do a lot of magic damage, so they're helped a lot by Magic Lure. A lure monkey is a mage whose job it is to reduce a boss's resistances to 0. You help everyone else and not you. Your DPS doesn't matter, and what you do is go max all of your lures, all of your focus, all of your ability, and there's not a direct resistance boost the way that there's a direct damage boost or a direct resistance reduction boost. So a lure monkey is basically someone who just shows up and throws lures at the boss. I won't go into the details of how to do that build or anything like that in this video. So something else to note is add or adds if it's written in the chat, right? So, never mind, my chat's muted, I can't show you. But if someone says add or adds, it will normally be a healer. If it's a healer, they're probably being attacked, and you need to prioritize killing the adds that kill the healers, because the healers don't have any DPS and they're focused on keeping the tank alive. The adds are interrupting their heals, and if the healers die, then the tank can die and the raid can go south very quickly. Pretty much tank dies, expect to be done. Okay, so you want to, if you see a healer call add, you want to look for that particular healer and kill whatever's on them. If you see somebody who can handle adds, calling adds, right? You see a rogue call adds or something like that, probably what they mean is that adds are up and people aren't focusing on them. So stop trying to fight the boss and go focus on whatever has just been called. Normally the person making the call will be standing next to whatever it is that you need to be killing. Adds are basically additional enemies at a boss that are not the main boss. Raids, by the way, is a general term for boss fight. However, there are raid bosses in particular, which in Celtic Heroes would mostly be Agrigoth, Mortis, Prung, Proteus, Bloodthorn, the Necromancer. That's going to be the primary ones. There's also the legacy bosses, which do qualify as raid bosses in a lot of cases. For instance, Skane and Garanach. However, they're often referred to as legacy bosses because they were brought back from old events, and they have a rare spawn, but they're still around. It's a nod to the fact that they're old from old events. Same thing would be true of Aeon gear, although Aeon gear, that's a lot more controversial of a topic. But if you see Aeon in something, what this means is it came out in a chest saying, hey, this will never come out again, and then they brought it out again. Anyway, you'll see it's a mythic Aeon spirit glider. That means in the original event, there were mythic spirit gliders and an advertisement saying, hurry up and get these because they'll never come again. And in Aeon, they released chests that had all of the old gear. I actually see points to both parts of the argument. Because I'm not a collector, it didn't hurt me for Aeon to come out. I do think it was very poorly handled. But we won't get into all that. They're doing what they can now. Okay. Now, so Aeon gear is old event gear. There is a luxury shop, which I have a tutorial on how to get to. It is in the sewers, or I have a tutorial on how to open, rather. And it has basically Aeon luxury gear as well. We'll take a look real quick at that. But the Aeon luxury gear is not stamped Aeon. What happens is there's about 200 items at that vendor. And if you buy one of said items, when you reopen the shop, you have to close it and reopen it. There will be a new item there. I'm not going to do that, right? But if I were to buy this, and you can see I can't because it's 500,000 gold and I only have 173,000. Then a new necklace will show up. If I buy this, then a new ring will show up, and that includes the Reaper ring. If I buy this, then new bracelet will show up. And I have a friend who might need this. But either way, okay, here we go. So that is primarily the terms you're going to run into as a mage. PvE means basically enemies that are not a real player. PvP means enemies that are a real player, person versus person. You can duel here, or you can go to the global arena. You'll notice there is no laystone in the global arena, but you can ride in there. It's basically like another server, sort of, and all servers go there at the same time. Expect to be killed if you don't really know what you're doing there or are not high level. So, anyway, that's most of the terms I can think of at the moment. A couple of things worth noting is that the word grim stands for grimoire. It is a book. I'll see if I have one. It can be an offhand or a main hand. I do not. Oh well. And yeah, they're basically just books. It's the game term for books. By the way, damage over time is shortened to DOT, which I'm not sure if I covered that. And then Ice Shards is almost never shortened to IS, and Ice Blast is almost never shortened to IB, despite the fact that the fire skills are. So they're just Shards and Blast, right? And you still have to be aware if you use IS or IB, most people will take a second probably to see what you're saying. So buffs, by the way, would include, might include pet food even, but they definitely would include like energy shield and lure of ice. They make me stronger, but they don't necessarily attack the opponent. So that those skills would be referred to as buffs. Anyway, I hope some of that helps someone. Oh, one more. Here you go. So this, DL and EDL are Dragon Lord and Exalted Dragon Lord. I'll hopefully do a separate video on armor. However, I do want to show you the auras. If you hear someone say DL aura, it's this. This is extra stuff that happens once I equip my armor set. I will do a video on why I don't usually wear that armor set later. Basically, the short answer is my DPS is so much higher without the DL armor set. If I just use pieces cobbled together, my DPS is so much higher that there's just no excuse to be using a DL set in most cases. All right. Anyway, yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next video. Goodbye.